Joining us to do today's business meeting. So thank you for starting our meeting by being here with us today. Chris Condit from Hillside Christian Church is going to start our meeting off with an invocation. Chris, thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for your service to our community. We appreciate you. So thank you. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your goodness and your mercy, God, that you show us each and every day. And we thank you for Amarillo, for the Texas Panhandle, and this place that we get to call home. And so, Father, we ask your blessing on our home. God, we ask that, as Scripture tells us, that homes are built on the foundation of your wisdom. So we ask for wisdom, God, so that we can stand strong through storm, through good weather, whatever we are facing. So, God, we pray for wisdom for our leaders here, Father, that you would just lead and guide them on the principles, God, that you've called them to. Father, we pray that you'd give these servants enlightened hearts and minds to make sound and fair judgments for the good of all the people in the city, and give them insight and understanding into the problems that they face so that, Father, they can find solutions to solve those problems. Proverbs 8, God reminds us that you're a generous giver and that you give wisdom for all who ask it. So we're praying for that today, for wisdom for these leaders, for all those who are gathered here as part of this meeting, that, God, they would skillfully and rightly make decisions that will lead to the success and the benefit of our region. Your word also teaches us that where there's no vision, the people perish. So, God, I pray for a vision for our leaders, for our town, and for our people, God, that they would dream dreams that only you could accomplish, and then we could watch those things take place through the work of the hands of the people here. God, honor the sacrifice of these leaders who give of their time and their energy to serve. And God, I truly pray that for every negative comment that they hear hundreds, God, of positive comments on the things that they're doing to make our city the best city that it can be. Bless them, bless their families, and bless the work that's set before them today. We love you and thank you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you are in the audience to help us celebrate National Cleaning Week, we would like to invite you to come up here and join us. Bobji, you know the way. Debbie, are you coming too? Yes, come on up. Hi. Good to see you. Yes, good to see you. Whereas regular floor care, air duct cleaning, and disinfection are an investment in human health and safety, and whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention stresses the importance of routine cleaning and disinfecting to protect public health, and whereas according to the world's leading trade association for the cleaning industry, International Sanitary Supply Association, cleaned and disinfected surfaces reduce virus concentration by 41.7%. When combined with hand hygiene, this increases to 85.4%. And whereas nearly 3 in 5 are more aware of surface cleanliness when they are out in public, and over half say they would be more likely to frequent a business if it provided evidence that their facility had been properly disinfected. Whereas the Environmental Protection Agency states that the levels of indoor pollutants are often 2 to 5 times higher than outdoor levels, and whereas essential frontline cleaning professionals work tirelessly to keep our schools, hospitals, workplaces, and homes healthy and safe for us all. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council members of the city of Amarillo, Texas, do hereby proclaim March 26th through April 1st, 2023 as National Cleaning Week in Amarillo, and join in this national celebration of the cleaning industry to bring attention to the importance of ensuring clean and sanitary conditions at work, in schools, and at home, given under our hands and seal of office this 28th day of March 2023. So, obviously, it's spring cleaning, yes? And we have a couple of different people here that are involved in that in our city. Bobji, do you want to go first? Yes? I'm going to give you the microphone for just a second.
We have a huge problem in Amarillo. We have so much litter floating around, there's no end to this thing. Unless you keep on cleaning it up, you cannot make any difference. I can tell you one thing. From now until April 22nd, National Earth Day, I'll pick up at least 30 bags of trash. But I want everyone to pick up one bag during this time. I picked up 2 bags yesterday along the Amarillo Boulevard. Nobody told me to do that. But that's the only way you can keep the neighborhoods clean. So I'm going to all these schools now, and I'm just sending a flyer to the peach jar, and I think we'll make some difference this year. So hopefully, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bobji.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I have a squeaky voice, but it's my privilege to be here with Mayor Nelson and to be part of National Cleaning Week, and that needs to be every week. Our homes and our offices, our environments that we're in, our schools, our churches, every place where there's people, there's germs. And it's really important to keep our environments clean so that we don't spread disease. And I think we learned our lesson back in 2020. So the neat thing about it is there's a lot of cleaning professionals here in our town, and all of them are dedicated to clean, period. Doesn't matter who you call, just call someone. We prefer you call Carpet Tech, but we understand that there's a lot of people that are in that business, and we're really grateful for that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our employees and tell you that they are very rigid in their cleaning methods. And we try very hard to make sure that the environment that we leave you with is 100% disinfected when we're done. If we keep our employees safe, we get to do the jobs that you hire us to do. And it doesn't cost nearly as much money to clean your business as it does to not have your employees show up. So we really appreciate your offers to come and do business with you guys. If there's anything that I can do for you personally, please call Carpet Tech and let them know that you'd like to speak with me, and I'll help you with your commercial or your residential needs. Thank you.
Thank you guys for the work that you're doing in the community, and I hope you'll stop by my house this weekend and help me with my spring cleaning.
Sure.
Right? Exactly. So can we take a picture? I was like, what is this? Oh, got it. Debt issuance. There you go. Okay, the next item on our agenda is public address, and I'll pass the microphone to our city secretary to moderate that.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for participating in today's City Council meeting. Your input and your opinions are important to us, and we are glad that you're here to share them. At each posted meeting, we invite our fellow community members to address City Council regarding posted agenda items. Every speaker has 3 minutes to address the council. At the end of 2.5 minutes, you'll hear a warning beep that will alert you you have 30 seconds left to wrap up your thoughts. We do ask you stay within your allotted 3 minutes. Speakers are asked to limit your comments to items on the posted agenda. We do have a public hearing today, so if you're here to speak on an item with a public hearing, we would ask that you do so either during public address or during that public hearing, but not both, in order to help us keep better records. It's your choice when you would like to speak. When you come to the microphone, please state your name, whether or not you live in Amarillo city limits, and if you are on, for, or against the items you are speaking to. Again, thank you for being here today. We have one person signed up for public address, Mr. James Skank.
Thank you for this opportunity. James Skank, live in the city. One of the things I want to speak to right off is the classic example of broken public comments that even went on in this last meeting, where once again make a comment and ask for some discussion and explanation, and as I sat down was spoken to in my chair personally that I insinuated something when all I was doing was asking an explanation of what went on, which Dr. Shire put on, a good one, and let us all know. And while I have been following that, a lot of people don't. So one of the things that I would like to see discussed, because here we are again, cart before the horse, I would like to hear what Laura's going to talk about the hot revenue bonds prior to me talking about it. But so I have to just sort of have an imagination. My first one would be, I know we're trying to cover a $3.5 million extra Major League Baseball requirement on the ballpark, and we're trying to come up with finding the money. And one question is, the ball team going to share any of that cost with us? I know the contract is written rather, would have never signed that, but, and then how long is the debt service going to be on that $4.5 million? So hopefully we'll be talking about that some, and then I'm looking forward to the quarterly budget update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skank. Mayor, that concludes public address.
Thank you, Stephanie. Item 1A is to review the agenda for the regular meeting and any of the attachments. Are there questions up front on that, Council? Oh, yeah, I'll go back for it.
No, Mayor.
Okay. I want to get to 3A. We're going to move an item up, Council, item 3A, just because we have bond counsel here with us today, and Stephen needs to catch a flight. So we want to make sure that we give him the time to get to the airport and do that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Appreciate you working with us to move this item up. We also are needing to get back with the group that's looking to purchase the bonds to make sure that they know that y'all are in support if you are. I wanted to note at your places there's an ordinance, and it says draft and it says 3A rule in big red letters. Make sure you all got a copy of that.
Let's just pause for a sec. Did we all get a copy of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yes, these numbers, this is hot off the press. They came in about 10 minutes ago. So appreciate y'all working with us to put this draft copy in front of you. I have Stephen Adams with Specialized Public Finance here to go over the sale. And I will not steal all of his thunder, but I wanted to address some items that were brought up during public comment. So first off, as you know, there are several items we're looking to address over at the ballpark, and this is related to Major League Baseball requirements to keep the facility up to certain standards in order for us to have a team that plays in that facility. Some of those items are some locker room improvements. There's some dining facility improvements that have to change. There's some storage areas. And then there's some netting extensions that have to be added related to some of the foul ball areas. And so what we're looking at, and I know as Mr. Skank mentioned, our original estimate was $3.5 million into the construction fund. We're now looking at an estimate of $4 million with the changes with the netting that came in right as we were presenting to you all last time. Stephen's going to go over this with you guys, but we are looking at approximately $380,000 in annual debt service. One of the questions was, how are we going to pay for that? We have met with the baseball team and talked through some negotiations on utilizing some of the funding that they're already paying in. So what the agreement has come to is that they have an amount that's going into a capital reserve and improvement account. Currently, they have $175,000 annually that's going to pay debt service and $225,000 annually that's going into this reserve account for some improvements or repairs as they come up. We have discussed with them for the term of these bonds, which go out to, I believe it's 2043. We have negotiated that we will utilize, of the $225,000, we'll utilize $175,000 of that to pay for this debt service. This was not something either party anticipated, and the team was very willing to work with us in trying to cover these unexpected costs that we've got to do to keep the facility up to the standards. So as you break it down, one other thing, we have another partner in the room here. I'll call out Cash and Smith with our Convention and Visitors Bureau. They're already assisting with some debt service related to the ball field, the original issuance. We've talked about them putting a little bit more towards this issuance as well, and Cashin was agreeable on that as well, knowing that it's important to the tourism in our area. So when you break down the numbers, we're looking at approximately $175,000 coming from the lease with the ball team. We're looking at $50,000 from CVB, and the remaining amount will come from the city's hotel occupancy tax collections. What that would translate to is about $155,000 to $157,000 annually from the city's hotel occupancy tax. So as a reminder, we are not looking to utilize any property tax dollars on this debt issuance. This will come solely out of our existing revenue sources from the lease and from hotel occupancy taxes, and working with CVB on that as well. Are there questions I can answer before I turn this over to Stephen to let y'all know about the results?
Yes, ma'am. If I could,
Yes.
Can you explain the 175 from the team?
Yes. So currently they have a total amount. There's 175, going to debt service currently, and 225 that's going into a capital reserve and improvements account. It has to be negotiated between the city and the team to utilize those funds if there's a repair that comes up, or if there's an improvement. I'm looking to see, I don't know if Jerry's here or not. I think we had done some awnings at one point in time with some of those dollars. That account has not been utilized much since the beginning of the lease. It was well over $750,000. And so since there's a large amount in that, we asked the team if, instead of putting $225,000 of their funding into that account annually, if we could put $50,000 in that account annually, since it already has a large balance, and then if we could use $175,000 towards this additional debt issuance, and that would only go through the term of these bonds, which I believe is through 2043, and they were agreeable to that term. So those are not city dollars. We were not receiving those to fund current debt service or to do anything on the city's side. It was just being held in an account, earning interest to potentially be used as repairs and maintenance came up. Does that help?
It does. So in the lease, it's $400,000 annually.
Yes, sir.
That's paid by the team.
Yes.
And you're instructing $175,000 of that to come out of that account annually to pay for this debt service, or towards the debt service.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
And I'm just clarifying, on behalf of James and a few other citizens that have reached out to me on this topic, the $50,000 from CVB,
Yes.
that's just coming out of their annual budget, right? So they just
Absolutely.
carved
And
that out.
that's, and as, if you'll remember, they are funded from the city's hotel occupancy tax, from a portion of the city's hotel occupancy taxes. They do the city's tourism efforts. It's way more complex than that, but that's simplifying it. So yes, they have agreed to use that out of their existing budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Storrs. And just not to put you on the spot, but I know you know it. So what's the total hot tax revenue last year, or what's a good average?
Okay.
Just
bear
to
with
put
me.
this 155 in perspective.
Sure, absolutely. Bear with me just a second here. I've got a page on it.
It's right around 9 million.
Oh, it's just under 9 million. Yep. Thank you,
We have
Stephen.
a total of $9 million coming in hot tax that we're using for things like this that will continue to incentivize and grow and boost our
That is
local
correct.
tourism and activities quality of life.
Absolutely. And to that point, the more we invest in these tourism efforts, hopefully the more tourists it'll bring in, which will only cause these numbers to go up. And if you go back to pre-COVID, we're at about 7.2 million in annual collections. We dropped down during COVID, as you all know, and then popped right back up. This past year, we were actually just shy of 9.6 million. I just found the number. So yes, very strong. We want to keep doing things in order to boost that tourism here locally, and one is supporting to keep a baseball team here.
Okay, and so just to once again clarify, you're doing the best you can with what you have.
Yes.
So your current lease does not allow for, well, I shouldn't say does not allow. Your current lease stipulates that you cover the cost of these improvements based on Major League Baseball's new criteria. We're no longer a minor league.
I'm not sure that's true.
Is that not true?
I just think that's a little bit of an overstatement.
Can you clarify that? Because I'm
Yes.
to the point of I just want to know, in the cost share, are we doing all we can to make sure that we're paying for the things as the leaseor that we should per the contract?
I'm just now confused. You're asking, what is our obligation under the contract for paying for these improvements?
Yes, ma'am. Good way to say it.
Okay, and I'll let Brian jump in if I misstep any on this, but the actual MPEV, the baseball field, is a City of Amarillo asset. And so in order for us to maintain our lease with the ball team, we have to provide a facility that meets the standards that they can play in. And I'm probably simplifying that a little bit, but if that makes sense. If the facility does not meet the standards for Major League Baseball, it could nullify, I guess, the agreement with the team. I'm looking at Brian to make sure I'm stating the right words.
You're stating it right.
Okay.
That would be a material breach.
Exactly. And so if we don't meet standards, they can't play in the field. Major League Baseball will not allow them to, and so then we start breaching contract with that, or breaking the contract.
Okay, that's a good explanation, not trying to get in the weeds on the contract, but just trying to give an overall summary of, we have an existing lease, we have an existing contract, does not allow for us to not do the improvements, have to do the improvements. Per Major League Baseball's requirements, even though it's a new facility and we've got tens of millions of dollars invested already.
That is correct.
So what you've done is you've brought forth a proposal that has somewhat of a shared cost as much as you can share it.
Yes,
Okay.
that is true. And I just wanted to state that as challenging or as large of a dollar amount as it appears we're putting into a very new facility, these were standards that were changed for all facilities, and those that had had older facilities, more aging facilities, are looking at significantly more dollars to keep in compliance. So not what we anticipated. There is something in the agreement for some negotiations at about year 15, I believe. And we were not expecting anything ahead of that time period. However, in order to have a team that complies with Major League Baseball, we are somewhat subject to what Major League Baseball requires us to do.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Storrs.
Yes. Are there other questions I can answer before I let Stephen go over the debt issuance?
Let me ask a question. initially, when we made an agreement with Elmore Sports Group, we said at time, and I don't remember, 10 years or so, that
Yes.
we would reevaluate because chairs might get broken and things may need to change.
Yes.
And so we weren't going to do anything till then. But the Major League Baseball, they came on with more requirements before that time period, so we needed to address this. So this is addressing ahead of time.
This is not, I think, to the extent of what was built into the agreement, but it is starting to address some of that ahead of time. And our hope is that it will potentially lessen some of what we have to look at about that 15-year mark in the agreement, but there's no guarantees. And I will say we tried to approach Major League Baseball to get something, to negotiate with them that they would not have anything else that comes forward. They do not make any of those kind of agreements. And so this is where we're at if we want to have a team. And so we are hopeful that this will lessen some of what we're looking at in another, 10 years or so. But time will tell.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Stephen, and we have a presentation. All right.
Okay. So we do have a presentation. Yeah, it's on good. We just negotiated this morning, and so we just completed the documents in the presentation. And I can't seem to control this, so maybe there's an on-off switch. Got it. There it is. Okay, I got it. All right. So anyway, as you know, we've been working on this for several months, and we negotiated this with Frost Bank as an underwriter this morning, and this bond issue is taxable rather than tax exempt. And when we do tax exempt bonds, we typically bid them out. The taxable market, however, is much more volatile than the tax exempt market, so it's difficult to do that. And furthermore, in the last several weeks, that market has become even more volatile for several reasons, including Fed action and bank failure. So this morning, the market was again volatile, so we moved the pricing back. We were going to start at 10. We started at 11. And now Frost Bank has, as an underwriter, gone out and sought out ultimate buyers. This is not a bank loan, but they helped us find other investors, and there are 8 total investors involved in this around the country. And, and though the mayor's moving it up to get me out of town faster, they're interested in knowing that you're going to buy these bonds because they're in a very volatile market. So we also asked to move it up for that reason. And so the bonds have an A+ rating, underlying rating, and a AA rated assured guarantee insured rating. So we qualified for bond insurance. The bonds will be able to be called at par on August the 15th of 2032, and the true interest cost is 5.42%. And we showed this to council earlier, I think back in November. We showed you like a 6.6%. So the rates have really come down a lot since November, so it's worked out really good from a City of Amarillo perspective. And if you do approve this today, the documents will then go to the Attorney General's office to be approved, and will close on April the 27th. Here's a graph of the existing hotel occupancy tax bonds. I think Laura said that red line should be at $9.6 million now. We have an older number from an existing audit. And you can see that your debt service coverage, your debt service, the green is the existing bonds that were issued to finance the stadium itself. The blue on top is the 2023 bonds that you're considering today, and you can see that you have a lot of coverage between your revenues coming in and your debt service going out. Now, of course, there's a lot of uses for all that money, so it's definitely budgeted to other purposes as well. This is your debt service, and as Laura pointed out, goes through 2043, and the debt service is about $381,000 per year. The sources and uses of funds, We're selling $4,575,000 in par, less a discount of $7,829.15. $4 million is going to the construction fund. $376,000 is going to a reserve fund, which will be there in case there's ever a situation where your revenues are not enough to pay the debt service, but most likely we'll just use it to make the last payment on these bonds. You have cost of issuance and underwriter's discount and a premium for that AA bond insurance that are all being paid out of bond proceeds as well. And then with that, we do recommend that the city award the $4,575,000 hotel occupancy tax revenue bonds, taxable series 2023 to Frost Bank. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Stephen? Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion with regard to this item, council?
Yes, Mayor, we do. I move to adopt ordinance number 8053, authorizing the issuance of the City of Amarillo, Texas hotel occupancy tax revenue bonds, taxable series 2023, prescribing the forms, terms, and provisions of said bonds, pledging hotel occupancy tax revenues to the payment of the principal of the interest on said bonds, enacting provisions incident and related to the issuance, payment, security, sale, and delivery of said bonds, including the approval and execution of a paying agent/register agreement and a purchase agreement, and the approval and distribution of an official statement pertaining thereto, and providing an effective date.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve this issuance. Any further questions or discussion on the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Dr. Sauer.
So I remember whenever we kind of started down this road in 2017, really, we were talking about when we committed the funds, the hot funds, I believe, wasn't at that point in time, we were committing about 50%, correct, of our hot tax coming in were being committed to paying for the facility, correct? So I'm curious at exactly when we even add this 4.57 million in, what now, based upon current today rates, which is we were basing it on current day rates back then, what is the percentage of how much of hot funds are we actually tying up for this facility on a percentage?
Okay, so rough math, if y'all will bear with me, I would say about 40%.
About 40%?
Yes. So because our hot revenues have continued to grow, and if you'll remember so we did a 2016 debt issuance for hot bonds for the parking garage, 2018 for the ballpark, and those were scheduled to start out heavier on the interest side and kind of pushing some of the principal off. And so we did not hit the full debt service payments, I believe, until maybe last year. And so we are at the largest amounts that we'll be paying over the terms of those bonds. And plus this, we're now at probably about 40%. Okay. Yeah. And that was off of last year's collection numbers. So, and we're tracking pretty good so far. Well, I'm stealing Matt's thunder, but we're tracking pretty flat right now this year with our budget, and we had only done a small amount of growth, so it actually might be a little bit less than 40% at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Questions from the left side? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Same sign. Okay, the motion passes with a 5-0 vote. And we appreciate the work that you are doing on this for us, Laura and Stephen, and we're happy to work on that quicker timeline. Thanks for getting us a good deal. I also want to bounce back up and we had a staff announcement that I want to go back up and make sure we cover, so I'll pass the microphone to the city manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Where's Bo Folks at? There he is. I was looking the wrong direction. I want to introduce Bo as our new director of Civic Center director. He's been serving as the assistant director for some time. Bo came to the city as an event supervisor over 23 years ago on an easy to remember anniversary date, 9/9/99.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great poker hand. 2 weeks ago, that was 2 weeks prior to Styx and REO Speedwagon performing at the Civic Center, in case anybody wants to feel dated. What a start. Filled the position as an event supervisor for 9 years before promoting to assistant general manager in 2009. Bo had spent a 20-year career in retail managing and owned his own businesses prior to employment with the city. Educational career included Amarillo College, WT. He obtained an International Association of Venue Managers Certified Venue Executive, the CVE designation in 2021. This is a big deal. It's the highest designation offered for achievement inside this industry. Bo will be the fourth general manager in 55-year history of the Amarillo Civic Center. Looking forward to the challenge. And he knows all the secrets, or he knows where everything is.
Oh, and we really appreciate the fact that you've been serving as our interim while we figured out what our plan was going to be over there. So thanks for being patient with us.
But nothing but fun.
Yeah, and I think it's important we have a lot of WT students in the audience today, and we always enjoy having students in our audience to see what happens in our local government meetings. But I really want to point out that this is important. Bo got his education right here locally at ACNWT and plays a very, very important role in our city operations. Nothing happens at the Civic Center, whether it's a charity event or a concert or a theater show or car show, lots of different things happening over there that affect the entire population of the whole Panhandle, not just the city of Amarillo. And we have an Amarillo College and a WT alum in charge of that. So this could be you. You should be looking for your opportunities in our city, just like Bo has. And I want to thank you, Bo, for your many, many years of service to the city.
You bet. Thank you.
We hope there are many more.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
And he's a Canyon Eagle.
Oh, and he's Canyon Eagle. Okay. Thanks for adding on to that. Says another Canyon Eagle. Okay, moving down into the agenda, item 1B, little I, is a report. So we'll do reports from council members who serve on outside boards and commissions. And first, we'll go to the Mayor Pro Tem for a report from the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I'm going to pass the baton off to Cashin Smith and let her give that report. I did attend that meeting. I was there for about 10 minutes because I had another meeting with AISD. So,
Cashin always has your back.
Yes,
that's right.
She does.
It was a pretty quick meeting, but very good. We only had 2 topics on the agenda this time around. Hope gave an update on marketing and some of the upcoming campaigns and the campaigns that we have running right now with the Route 66 festivals and all of that coming up. We have a lot of partners involved. So this report, instead of really being based on the numbers, was very visual. So she really gave some good examples of the ads and the social and print and all of that that is going on. And then the main meat of discussion in the meeting and where we really got into some good work was over the incentives that our office gives out. And y'all should have a little bit of a packet in front of you. It is basically what Stephanie used to walk through some examples of how we utilize incentive funds and how we come to agreements with different types of groups. And I won't go too far into this, but I wanted you guys to have the same examples. So what you should have is a basic, hopefully all of you have it. I know Stephanie said yesterday she set it out.
Yes, we do.
So, okay. So the first page basically is an overview of ways that we might qualify and kind of the guidelines that we put around the activity fund that we use for incentives. Then there are some examples of the summary of services that we are using those funds towards. You'll also see some examples of letters of agreements with different types of groups, and then the economic impact calculators that we use to qualify those groups. So I know with our partners, and especially those that don't work very close to us, it sounds like sometimes we just cut checks, I guess, to get business into town. And of course, we do have trade shows that we go to and really sit down, and during those conversations, we might make some promises. But when true dollars are coming into those conversations and the agreements are coming together, we do have some guidelines on that. And we have some expectation from the groups. And we also look at how do we get them in specifically for the events that are going to stay in Amarillo. So not necessarily for the associations that come in one time and then 3 or 4 years we're going to have to rebid to get them back. So anything that's coming in to stay year over year, in the last couple of years we've really tried to define a good process of how do we get them in, how do we support them so that they can grow and become stable, and how do we work them out of the incentive fund. A few years back, if you are aware of our funds that we use in this way, they were really, I don't want to use any kind of negative term because this is good business and great partners that were in there, but we were limiting our business that we could do for new business is how I'll say that. We had a lot of groups that had been in there for many, many years, some of which say hotel use had actually gone down and funds had stayed the same. So we really evaluated and had some hard conversations and went through and requalified the groups that were in the activity fund, and then are slowly kind of moving them out with great support and introductions to local and community partners that can offer sponsorships to keep them here, so that they're not just staying in the incentive fund, and that we can grow with new business with those funds. So it's been a long process, but we feel like we've kind of nailed it down and have a good system now. So we had a great conversation with the board on that, and that's really where the meeting business was done. Do y'all have any questions on that or anything that you'd like me to really identify within that conversation? I mean, there's a lot that goes with that.
Cashin, one of the things that's highlighted on each one of these reports, and these reports are just examples of many, many offers that you guys make, partnerships. I'm sure you have deals that you run and you're like, you know what, this one doesn't pencil out. We're not going to offer any incentive on this one. But one of the things you have highlighted here is something called net direct local tax, ROI.
We do not give.
Explain what that is, and that's one of the most important numbers in helping you evaluate.
Definitely the most important part of the system that we are trying to really adhere to now is that we do not pay out more incentive than what we will gain back in hotel funds and hotel tax specifically. So that really breaks down a lot of different items, and there are some groups that really started at a big point where we're looking at overall tax collections that are brought back in, sales tax and those kind of things, to start tearing them off of the fund. But for the most part, we really try to keep it to the hotel occupancy tax because that is in its truest form what we are here to grow. So yes, that is the qualifying factor. One thing I don't want anybody to think on this is if you have a very small impact on the hotel occupancy tax is that we don't incentivize you to come in. We will still do marketing support. We will still help you build your registration out. We will still do the virtual welcomes and links that you need, build out excursions to help you gain the extra nights to build a better history so that maybe you can qualify in the future. So there's a lot of different ways that we support, but this is very specific to the impact that the group has within the tourism community.
And I think that I hear that occasionally, just wanting to know how are the dollars being invested and how is it tracked so that we know we're getting a return on those dollars. And I think you've done a good job in this packet of showing that you have a process, a very intentional process and strategy for what projects get funded. And if anybody's curious and wants more data, they can reach out to you and get a packet similar to this, or maybe this exact packet, that just shows the software you use to analyze that, the type of reports that it puts out, and people can have just peace of mind that there are financial processes in place. We're looking exactly for that return on investment.
Exactly.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Cashin.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Item 1B, little I, is a report from the Amarillo Metropolitan Planning Organization, and Mayor Pro Tem and I serve on that board. It is a policy board that makes recommendations to staff that includes TxDOT staff as well as our metropolitan planning staff on how we spend our federal highway dollars that are processed through the state. But those are big dollars, and they involve both the city of Canyon, the city of Amarillo, Potter County, and Randall County. But many of those projects are years and years and years long. So anything Metropolitan Planning Organization is always a big impact for our community, but always a long time frame. And so during our meetings, we're always talking about either a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or a 25-year plan. And this meeting, we spent a lot of time updating our mission and vision statements. It's just been a while since those had been freshened up. And we also talked about, in our next meeting, we will have a presentation from our city beautification coordinator and how MPO, TxDOT, and the city in their beautification projects need to be working together. So anything you want to add to that?
The only other thing that I would add, Mayor, is that we did talk about the goals, too, as well, and then also maybe revamping our logo for the organization, too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions, council, on that? Okay, item 1C is an update on the budget. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we've got our Director of Finance, Matt Poston, to present the item. Also going over, in addition to the budget, he'll also be touching on sales tax revenues. We're combining these two reports into one going forward. Matt.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We're going to go over the quarterly budget update for the first quarter of our fiscal year 22-23. So that would be the 3 months ended 12/31 of 22. We will start with the general fund budget. Our general fund revenue budget for the first 3 months was $66.6 million. Our actual revenues came in at $70.6 million, giving us a $4 million positive variance. You can see on the next page of the presentation what's driving that variance. You can see property taxes come in $2.7 million. That's not really that property tax is over. That's more of a timing issue. It's been kind of hard these last couple of years since fewer people itemize to kind of know when people are going to pay their property taxes. So looking through to into January and February, we're right on target with budget. So property tax isn't going to come in over budget. Sales tax, you can see as of December, we're up $2.3 million. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Hot tax, we're about flat. We're down about $14,000 from what we had budgeted. Gross receipts, business taxes, which is your franchise fees for water, sewer, electric, gas, is just coming in right around budget at $51,000 over. Charges for services, those are the fees that we charge internally for services like in Parks and Rec and areas in solid waste like that are down $293,000, and then fines are down $132,000. On the next slide, you'll see a 10-year history of sales tax. You can see that last year our numbers came in very strong, just shy of $75 million. And, of course, the sales tax rate is 8.25%. Now you can see the current year collections. You can see that through December, as I said, we were up $1.1 million over last year and $2.3 million over budget. So that's a 6.38% increase from last year and a 13.65% increase above budget. Now, we do have March information, and through March, we are $2.3 million over last year, which is about a 6.18% increase above actuals from last year, and then we are $4.2 million above budget, which is 12.27%. And as Jared said, instead of doing the extra sales tax presentation, they'll be sending out some additional information in a city manager report, some of that more industry-specific information, but overall sales tax is doing good through March. Oh, on the next slide, you can see our hotel occupancy tax collections for the past 10 years. As we talked about earlier, you can see that the collections for last year came in record highs at just over 9.5 million, about 9.6 million. And as a reminder, the hotel tax rate is 7% for the city and 2% for the venue district. In the collections on there are just the city's side of that. And then here's the more detailed information. You can see that through December, the gross collections are right about even with last year. We're about 24,000 over, and we're just shy of budget. And then if you take into the rebate for the convention hotel downtown, that's where we come in just shy of last year, about 20,000 below and about 15,000 below on the budget side. Oh, there we go. The next slide is going to be your gross receipts business tax. This is the franchise fees. As you can see, these are all coming in fairly strong, especially electricity, 132,000 over what we've budgeted through this month, for a total of all the franchise fees coming in just shy of 60,000 over what we had budgeted. And then this last slide of this section, you can see the general fund expenses for the quarter. We had a budget of 60.4 million, actuals of 57.2 million, so we came in 3.2 million under budget on the expense side, so our general fund net variance is 7.2 million to the good through December. Any question on general fund before I move on to the next section? Okay. Next, we'll go over our utility sales. You can see here the current year collections on utility sales. Our solid waste is coming in slightly below budget at 156,000 through December. And then water and sewer sales are coming in slightly under budget at 1.5 million. And then drainage is coming in slightly over budget at 53,000 over budget through December. This next slide is just a chart showing the water and sewer trends from 2011 through now. It doesn't have any current year data, but this does show the final audited data from last year showing the correlation between water and sewer revenue and precipitation. The last thing we'll cover here real quickly is the health insurance update. Our medical claims and admin expense are staying good through our budget. They are 87,000 under what we had budgeted for the first quarter, so we are looking good on the medical plan. So, any questions?
Any other questions for Matt?
Just a quick water question. So is it typical this time of year to be down on sales just because it's wintertime, people aren't watering their yard?
It is our lower usage time, but we did have some disruptions in our utility billing software, as we all know, back in December. We're looking to see what impact, if any, that had on it. We're also looking at just to make sure everything's coming through there correctly. But it is normal that this is our lower water usage time of year.
Okay, and no other reasons why that would be lower necessarily? Okay.
No.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Item 1D is a discussion item on agenda management software. Mr. City Manager.
All right, we've got our City Secretary, Stephanie Coggins, to present the item. You can see some samples in front of you of the way agendas are going to look in the future. This will provide a lot more capability for us to manage the agenda, to communicate the agenda, to have staff interact with the agenda, and be able to streamline what the City Secretary does. Didn't mean to steal too much of your thunder, but you were walking up.
Hey, that's okay. He did a great job of introing this. So we have been working through implementing a new agenda management software. We're very excited to talk to you a little bit about it today, kind of give you a preview of what to expect and answer any questions you might have. Our current process right now we do through Outlook and Microsoft Word. It's very manual, very time-consuming, and as you know, any manual process also has more room for error. And so we've looked at other cities. One of the best practices is agenda management software. So right now we also have lower visibility on what's coming up the pipeline until the Wednesday before a meeting when our deadline hits and we start getting things. And so a lot of times we are not as prepared maybe as we want to be in knowing what's coming down that pipeline in advance. So, and as you are all aware, because you read them every 2 weeks, it's a very cumbersome paper agenda, very thick. So we have looked at an agenda management software called Civic Clerk. This new one will give us a streamlined submission process for our departments to enter their items and for us to review those through the different ranks, through City Attorney's Office, through purchasing, through the ACMs, and through the City Manager. It'll give better transparency for the users that are putting their items in on where they are in the process, and to the executive team to kind of get that rolling agenda and know what's coming down the pipeline. It's also going to give better access for council and for citizens, and so we're very excited about that part. And these next few slides I'll run through pretty quickly, but this just gives you a look at what's coming. Our new public portal, once we redirect to this, which we will plan on doing early next week, will look something like this. And what you'll notice here is there's a list of different meetings out here. There's a calendar where you can actually go and search for a specific board type, for specific dates, and we will show events out here even when we don't have meetings yet. So that's one of the things our current website is not as flexible with, and so you don't see a city council meeting on the calendar until the Friday before. And so once the public comes out to this public portal, they can click on a meeting like this city council meeting right here, and it will take them into the agenda. And it's more HTML based, where you can go down to the items, and what you'll notice down here, for example, on this consideration of an ordinance, you can see the attachments that are specific to that item. You can click into them very easy, and so the public can go in, look through this agenda, click on the attachments. The other side of this is you as council members will have a new board portal that will give you some efficiency and give you an electronic method to review your agendas. When we get done here, you should be receiving an email probably sometime today or tomorrow from Civic Clerk to get your account set up. So we will send you this link with some training videos that'll give you a little more detail. When you come out to this site, you'll notice on that red box you'll sign in that corner, and then you'll see the agendas here that you have available to you. And so for today's agenda, for example, you'd click on Amarillo City Council. It's going to take you into something that looks like this right here. And you'll notice each of these items has a little 3 dots in front of them. You can click on that, and on that bottom one down there in the screenshot, there's a place where you can review it, view attachments. If you click on one, you come into a screen like this, and I know it's a little hard to see out here in the audience, but your attachments are right here. There's a place where you can go in and put notes that are private to you in your board portal, so that if you have comments or notes you want to make to prepare for the meeting, you can. You can also go into the agenda itself, and you can use the annotations in the system. And so you'll see here I added a little blue note. This is how I can add a note by an item. You can highlight certain things. You can strike through things. And you can do this all in your board portal. And so very excited to be bringing this forward, and we wanted to give you guys a heads up on it. You can access the board portal through any technology. You can bring an iPad, you can bring a laptop, you can do it on your phone. You just need to log into that system, and then you'll have access to everything there.
Or we can print it, you can print it, and
Yeah.
you can use as much technology or as little as you want.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we want to share with you. While this pushes us in a more paperless direction, we're still happy to print those agendas for you. So if you like to turn the pages and write on them, we'll do that. If you're more comfortable with the technology, that's an option. So some of the next steps on this is, I mentioned you'll be getting an email, so we'll get you set up with that email. We will get the new public portal onto the city website, and then we've talked with communications, and they're going to help us put a little information out onto social media to introduce the public to the new look of this portal. We will send council some training videos, and then myself or Johnny are available, so we're happy to schedule some time with any of you if you'd like a little individual training to kind of get logged in, walk through it, get comfortable with it. Our agendas will look like this right here. So we put an example one in front of you. So it's going to change a little. We're going to go from legal down to letter size. We'll have this format right here. And then we will still have a packet. The packet for today's meeting, I think, was 62 pages, just because the agenda was an extra page or two since we're not on legal. But very similar. You'll notice in your packets today our agenda transmittal memos have a new look. And that's one of the things through the system. Our users go in, they fill out the fields, and it generates a very consistent agenda transmittal memo for us. So one of the upcoming things that we're not going to roll out right away, but that we do have the ability for with this software, is electronic voting. And so there will actually be an ability for you, if you want to bring your technology with you, then you can get on your iPad or your laptop during the meeting. You can sign into your board portal, and we can actually do some electronic voting, or you can see what items we're on. When we have the capability, we even have a board portal display page that we can put up in the council chamber that will show this is the current item, this is the speaker, and it looks very clean. So very excited about the hopefully increased transparency and accessibility to information for both our public and for you as council members. And with that, I would entertain any questions you might have about this.
Questions?
Yeah, why didn't you do this 6 years ago?
Well, never
only
too
been on the
late.
spot for a little while.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm taking notes and keeping notes on stuff,
Mhm.
is that subject to Freedom and Information Act?
It potentially would be, and I'm going to look at Brian to confirm me on that, but it's still a public record.
Which it is now, if you're making notes on your.
Absolutely. It would just be in a different format.
So,
Yeah, good question.
So, Stephanie, I'm excited about the software. So, like when we have events that come up, such as groundbreakings or whatever, so we could potentially reserve through this software, and will the date, we could do it ourselves and it show up on our calendars, and then we could leave notes or whatever.
I think we would still need to go set the event for you, but
Okay.
we could put events out there, such as those, Frida, and then you would have the ability to go in and add notes.
Where you would
Board
say,
portal.
are you going to attend XYZ event? And then there would be like a button out there that would say yes, no, maybe, and you could put it on your calendar.
I don't think this has that functionality, but I am going to check. We're still working with our implementation team, and so I will ask them that and see if there's some sort of functionality that would support that.
Okay, because a lot of the board software has that functionality in there, which is great, and it saves you guys time too. So
Yeah, I'll definitely check on that.
Do you have questions?
No, ma'am. All
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Just want to, I'm sure Jerry's not here, but I'm sure the new council chamber that's being planned in New City Hall has much better visual equipment and would interface nicely with a software change like this. Yes?
Yes, it'll be a
I
million
mean,
times
I
better
hope
than
it's a million times better, yeah.
We'll have completely state-of-the-art production capabilities, broadcast capabilities, sound. People will be able to hear us from anywhere. We'll have technology for voting through this. We're going to have it's going to address all of we're going to have better visibility for council members. Everything about the council chamber is going to be better than what we have right now. Not just technology, but it will incorporate and integrate with this seamlessly. This was actually designed for that.
Absolutely.
For a modern council chamber,
Mhm.
but it'll also work in this one.
And I will tell you, we are looking at purchasing iPads to check out to the council members so that you'll have that technology to be able to bring with you. They don't have an app. It's you just go use Safari or Chrome or whatever web browser you're comfortable with, but it's very good mobile format once you do. And so we're looking at that in the meantime, but like Mr. Miller said, we definitely have plans for better technology that will accommodate and allow us to use the best we can out of this software.
And then the only other thing I noticed was, I think about 5 years ago, the council asked that the city council mission be on every agenda, just as a reminder to us what the purpose of every meeting that we have is. So can that be added to?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can get that added for
Okay.
you.
I think that is important.
We'll get it added into the permanent header.
Okay.
above the agenda.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 1E, which is an update on federal grant applications. Mr. City Manager?
Right, Mayor, we are working to access as much federal money as we possibly can. There's a lot out there right now with infrastructure grants and other things like that. So to give a summary of all the grants that we're applying for, all the projects we're trying to fund, and all of the things that we're doing to facilitate that, we've got Andrew Freeman, Assistant City Manager, to present the item. We also have a number of staff members around the room that have been doing a lot of meaningful work on this project, including Kyle Sneederjohn, Emily Kohler, Rich Guyon, and others. So Andrew and that team is going to be available to answer any questions you have after this presentation or during the presentation. Andrew.
Yes, sir. So just to give a little bit of background, so this is something that we started spending a lot more time on just over the past year with all the new federal dollars that are being invested within states and other communities. So as you recall, City Council approved a contract with the Normandy Group last summer for federal government relations services. This really has given us a leg up as far as identifying available opportunities, as far as getting our foot in the door to speak to some of these agencies, as well as our federal legislators about these grant opportunities. So we have a very consistent process that we follow with the Normandy team. They meet with us every Friday to talk about different opportunities that we are researching, anything we've applied for, just getting prepared for any grant cycles that are coming up. So that really involves at least 2 from their staff, and then we have almost 10 from our staff every Friday morning that goes over all these opportunities. So that's a big part of our strategy. We also have ongoing communication with the federal agencies. So when we first engaged Normandy, they came in for a site visit to really meet with all the department staff, department heads, what are our priorities, and that really helped them hone in on different agencies, different grant opportunities, and create a strategy for us. Debriefing on those meetings, we actually scheduled quite a few just online meetings with these agencies, talk about their programs, just some examples there. The USDA, Department of Transportation, Federal Transit Authority, and the Environmental Protection Agency, just to get our face in front of them, ask some questions, learn more about their grants. It was just a great opportunity to learn more. Since that time and over the last 8 or 9 months, we've been submitting multiple grant opportunities of things that apply to projects that we're working on, goals of City Council, goals in our CIP program. Most of these programs are funded over a 5-year time frame, so we're going to have multiple opportunities. If we maybe don't get one this year, we can apply again next year. We also have been awarded some planning dollars that will prepare us for future applications that I'll touch on here in a minute. So right now we've had a little over $30 million in grant requests with approximately $6.67 million in matching funds that would go toward those projects. We have also requested a little over $6.5 million toward community project funding requests. That's through the U.S. Congress, working through Congressman Jackson's office for very specific projects that he might consider submitting through their annual budget process. And then most recently, as far as working with Normandy, a very important part of their process when they engage with communities is getting the communities to D.C. to meet with these agencies and our elected officials just to make sure they remember Amarillo's priorities, what our goals are, relationship building, just so we are better prepared when it comes time to submit these grant applications. So touching on the specifics of things we've been applying for recently, we've applied for the RAISE grant, which is honed in on infrastructure. We've actually applied for this one twice. We applied in fiscal year 2022 and were not awarded, but we were scored highly recommended, and 6 out of the 8 projects with the same scoring criteria were funded in Texas in that cycle, so we were right there on the edge of getting funded. So we have resubmitted that project. It's for the North Hughes Complete Street project, which would leverage some of TxDOT's funding that's gone into the Hughes-Adams Street Bridge project. So we are awaiting notification this summer to see if we're awarded that grant. The Safe Streets and Roads for All through the Department of Transportation, that's the most recent one that we've been awarded for, which is $240,000 to develop a safety action plan for fiscal year 2022. The total project cost is estimated about $300,000. So what that planning document will help us prepare for is looking for ways to make improvements to our roads and pedestrian-friendly ways that meet their criteria, which part of submitting for a infrastructure project is that you had to have a safety action plan in place. So we had to go ahead and get that one checked off first, and then over the next 3 to 4 years we'll be able to apply for specific projects that meet the needs of Amarillo. Next up, we've got the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. This is funds available for grade separation and elimination projects, really focused on community safety and efficiency of transporting goods and people and reconnecting neighborhoods and making sure people can get across those railroad crossings. We applied for that in fiscal year 2022. for the Northeast 24th Railroad Overpass project. It is an $8.4 million request for an $11.4 million project. So we are waiting for late spring, hopefully, to get an announcement on that one. The Transportation Alternatives Project, this one was actually through TxDOT, but they receive a lot of their funding, of course, through the federal government that comes down for some of these projects. The most recent award we had was actually in fiscal year 2021. That was the $1.79 million for the 10th Street Barrio Streetscape project. We've had to go through some changes with TxDOT and their requirements as far as adding bicycle design changes to the scope. So we've actually submitted for some additional funding through this next round that we've received positive comments on and should hear shortly if we receive that additional funding of $2.4 million to go toward that project. And then the latest one that we're evaluating applying for is the Reconnecting Communities program. That's similar to the railroad crossing elimination. It's these areas like East Ridge that are cut off from accessing if there's a rail in the way as far as a train coming through. It's looking for those kind of projects, which are bridge projects or other transportation needs. Next, I wanted to touch on the community project funding requests. This is through Congressman Jackson's office, and this is something that really benefited us as far as staff and elected officials going to D.C. and actually meeting with him to encourage him to submit for that process. He hasn't in previous years, but this year he did tell those that went on the D.C. trip that he was participating. Gave us a little guidance into that because we weren't quite sure, so we weren't ready for what his process would look like. So with Normandy's help, we were able to actually turn this around and be prepared for when the deadline hit. So we had a couple weeks notice working with them, and then we found out on a Wednesday what his process was going to be, and it was due on a Friday. So really gave us a leg up as far as making sure we were prepared to submit that. So without Normandy's help, we would have really struggled to get that turned in time. So the two projects we submitted are public safety related. The first being $4.5 million to improve the airport aircraft rescue and firefighting training program over at the airport to meet current FAA standards. That would look at replacing the fire stimulator and constructing a control building with required communications electric equipment. So right now ours is out of compliance, so we can only get to a certain point in our training before we have to go down to Lubbock to meet the certification requirements down there, which requires a lot of travel time, overtime, and all those things necessary to meet those training requirements. So we're hoping to have that here locally, which will also serve our region and some of other fire departments. Next up is $2 million funding request to establish the real-time regional crime center here in Amarillo that we've been working on. The funding would go toward the technology and the software, which is a big component of a real-time crime center. It's less the hardware and the office space and more the technology that's behind it. So both of these have been submitted. His deadline to submit it up to the next level through the agencies, I believe, is this Friday. So we're hoping to hear some good news soon as far as getting to the next phase. But we did have a meeting with his staff last week to talk about the project and answer their questions in preparation of hopefully getting submitted. He's able to submit up to 15 requests through that community project funding process. Any questions before I touch on the DC trip and some of those agency meetings? Any other grants?
Howard, do you have a question?
Not now.
Okay. I just had a few questions about how do we typically, before we had the Normandy group, how would we find out about grant programs or even that, how did that process work?
Really, it was a much more informal process. It was the department heads or their staff themselves being aware of the opportunities. We didn't have a specific staff person that was out there looking for them, except for maybe public health or community development. They're grant funded, so they have grant funded positions that focus on that, but they can't focus on citywide general fund priorities. Police department has a part-time grant writer, so it's kind of been piecemeal as far as priorities to get those. We are actually working right now to reclassify a position in our planning department that's going to be focused on grant writing to kind of work in tandem with our federal folks, and then having somebody that can actually attend the webinars, learn the best way to submit those grants, and work on the grant writing specifically. So I think we'll have a much better path moving forward.
And we've only, within the last handful of years, had a legislative agenda, participated in the legislative process at all. And then much more recently have we started focusing and dedicating personnel and human resources like Andrew and some of his team only recently started developing a legislative liaison type position. We are much more active in trying to find money. And I'll be frank, we want more than our share of money. There's not everybody's out there actively looking for money. And I mean, people passively receive money, and that's what we used to do. When a federal agency would call us and say, hey, this opportunity is out there, do something, we would do it. But we're looking for the ones where the agency's not foot stomping now. So this is doing everything that we can possibly do to bring more than our fair share of money to the Panhandle. And I think we can all agree that the Panhandle and Amarillo in particular have probably gotten short shift with regard to federal funds historically.
How, like when we reapplied for that RAISE grant, was Normandy helpful? Like, did they do anything to help us? We did that without them last year, and we didn't get it. So, like, tell me process-wise what kind of benefit we get from their help on resubmitting a grant like that.
We really benefit when we get their insight as far as how those agencies function, how they kind of grade those grants. They actually participate in the debriefing that we had with that federal agency to learn whatever we could from them as far as how they evaluated that project, which allowed us to tweak it the second time around. Wasn't a whole lot because we did do so well with the feedback we received, but they really just offer a lot with just their experience because they have someone that's been a congressman before. They know how the process works. They can kind of look around corners as far as what we should be presenting, how we should be tying it to the federal government's priorities to make it fit the narrative of Amarillo and how it benefits us, because that's really a lot of what they're looking for. They want to make sure it's investing their priorities and fitting within ours. So that's helped a lot having those conversations each week.
And then I wanted just a little bit more information about the railroad crossing elimination. Will you just tell us where in the city that is? It's Northeast 24th, the railroad overpass there, and what problems we have as it's currently configured.
Sure. So it's just northwest of Eastridge neighborhood. So they have an at-grade crossing there, and it's an area of town where the trains will just be backed up for probably about an hour or so, no movement. So we have a challenge of accidents there as far as vehicular accidents, but we also have the risk of pedestrians because we have students jumping across the train trying to get to school. So it's just a completely unsafe environment for vehicles, pedestrians. It cuts off EMS, fire access on that particular street. So it graded very well from a poor perspective because we have had accidents there. So that was a lot of the information they're looking for their criteria.
And Andrew, those students, they're throwing their bicycles between the
so not just climbing over
the train cars, trying to get to the other side, and then they're climbing over. So I mean that's really dangerous, and it's a safety issue. So
and I understand that because if it's blocked up and they've got to go a mile to get around the train to the next arterial street, right. and I'm a 12-year-old in my bicycle, that's a long. I probably didn't allow enough margin to get to school on time.
Exactly.
And so a shortcut looks good to me.
Yeah.
But that's a horrifying shortcut.
And something else that's really tied into these grants, because they look a lot at your planning. And we've got a great planning team, and with City Council and Potter County working on these neighborhood plan efforts, the East Ridge plan was something we could reference, and we've done our due diligence and know what the issues are, know what the community supports. So that's a lot of that extra work's already been done to prepare for some of these. Same with North Heights with the RAISE grant, because that goes right through that neighborhood. We've got all the data, we've got all the planning pre-done, so it makes it much easier to fill out those grants.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted a little more information about that.
And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on the D.C. trip. So this occurred I guess, just about a month or so ago. Time's flown. So mayor and city council members were invited along with city staff. Jared mentioned a couple that we had. We wanted to make sure we also sent staff that were the experts on some of these projects, some of these grants that we were working on. So we had Emily Kohler, Kyle Sneeder-John, Rich Guylon, as well as Jared in attendance at these meetings. So it was a jam-packed 2.5 days of meeting with agencies and elected officials. So I just wanted to touch on some of the takeaways. And this is just an order of the meeting, so they're not in any particular order here. But the first up was the Texas Department of Transportation. Of course, this was a great opportunity to talk about the Loop 335 project and the additional funding needed to complete that. We also talked about our grant applications, the RAISE grant, the Railroad Crossing Elimination grant. And through this meeting, it worked out really well. We actually received a support letter from TxDOT immediately after the meeting to submit, in addition, more supplement for our RAISE application. So that was a great conversation and relationship building meeting there. Next up was Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is the organization that's responsible for our community development and home grant program. So this was a good opportunity to talk about the allocation that we receive, in which we hope to continue to grow as our population grows, and the way the calculation works on those funding sources. But Marion pointed out some of our programs that we maybe haven't taken advantage of in the past that might be a good one for us to consider, like the 108 Loan Guarantee Program. That basically allows CDBG recipients to borrow up to 5 times of their allocation to be used for different projects. Interest rates are fixed and low relative to other financing options, so that's something that organizations consider to leverage their resources. Of course, you have to plan for that because it turns into a loan that you have to make payments on and could impact your annual allocations. So you just have to know how you're going to divvy up those dollars and prepare for your annual needs. She also previewed a funding for youth homelessness that's coming up that we weren't aware of that would debut in the next couple of months. It's focused on at-risk youth and targeting those 24 and younger. So that's another funding source that we're going to evaluate with Normandy to see if that's a grant opportunity for us to go after. We had a meeting with the U.S. Department of Justice, and specifically someone that worked in the Office of Violence Against Women. And there are a lot of programs that they provide and discussed in that meeting that are something we can research and see if it fits Amarillo's needs. She also provides some good contacts with the Texas Criminal Justice Division, as well as discuss some of the other agencies that we should have Zoom meetings and virtual meetings with as we prepare for some of these grants. The police department does a great job applying for state grants that gets funding through the Fed, so we're pretty well versed in applying for those state funds and taking advantage of those opportunities. And then U.S. Department of Transportation was very similar to the TxDOT conversations as far as talking about the Loop 335 project and talking through our grant applications. They mentioned that another grant program that we needed to research that's called the Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant, coming up in late spring, early summer. That grant's gotten $3 billion as part of the recent Inflation Reduction Act, and it's very similar to the Reconnecting Communities grant. So basically, there's all these grants that kind of touch similar needs and goals. So if we don't get funded with one, we might have the same project might be able to apply for another one. So we'll have multiple bites at the apple to try and get these projects done. They also talked to us about getting with our Safe Streets for All program manager that will be working on our plan coming up to make sure we're in line with them and help us understand, once you get that plan done, what are the next steps and how do you apply for those actual construction projects. We had a meeting with the Department of Commerce. This allowed us to really take a deep dive into the broadband discussion. So Rich took a good lead on this conversation as far as talking about what we've worked on, the AT&T partnership, as well as the state allocations that could hopefully benefit Amarillo and the Panhandle. They also mentioned another grant that could help with our refugee population, the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program that's currently getting public comments. So that's going to be a $1.25 billion program over 5 years. So just this opportunity to meet with these staff just brings up new programs that maybe we haven't thought about, new ideas that we haven't approached. So just building off those conversations. In Senator John Cornyn's office, met with Courtney Young and Bryson Albert, some of his legislative aides. Really meeting with the elected officials was really just an opportunity to thank them for their service, as well as tell the story of Amarillo, because they've got large districts and entire states that they represent. So making sure they were familiar with our projects as far as Ports to Plains, Pantex, the new Bell contract coming up. We also talked about our regional crime center and the aircraft rescue and firefighter training projects. The senator's office let us know that he was I skipped to the Senator Ted Cruz's office. Same conversation points, but we also talked about having their staff is planning a Texas trip, so we're going to focus on trying to get them to Amarillo during that trip so they can see some of these projects in person. And then they also continue to offer letters of support for our grant applications, which are very important as far as what we're submitting. We want to make sure we have our local representatives support our grant applications. Is something that they expect to see as you're applying for these grant fundings. And they've been very supportive in the past on those. As far as Senator Ted Cruz, one thing that came out of that meeting was his continue to push for Ports to Plains recognition in the Senate, which would open it up for additional formula funds. So that's very important as far as continuing the interstate system north of Amarillo and south of Lubbock. And then that was also an opportunity to talk about the Regional Innovation Engines proposal that AEDC and Amarillo College has been working on, because he is involved in the NSF as far as the committee that helps oversee the funding for that group. So that was a great opportunity to discuss that project. And then next up was Congressman Ronnie Jackson's office. The main point of that meeting was really to talk about that community project funding process and make sure whether or not he was going to continue to not participate or if he was interested in participating. That's where we found out, yes, he was, and that gave us an opportunity to learn more about what he was looking for in submittals and what his process might look like. He also talked specifically about the Crossbar Ranch project and his interest in it, and I believe they also submitted for consideration through his office, so that was an opportunity to talk about that project, which is outside the city limits, but something that would benefit our residents and the tourism for the area. So that was a great takeaway from the meeting. And then really the follow-ups from that is we kind of took a step back from debriefing on the trip, and we went full into how do we submit for the community project funding. So we spent the next couple of weeks preparing, and then once we found out exactly when it was due, it was a couple of days of just working on that effort. So very beneficial to have that meeting. And then the last one was actually a last-minute addition that the Normandy Group was able to get scheduled, which was with the National Science Foundation, which is responsible for that Regional Innovation Planning Grant that was submitted by AEDC and Amarillo College. So it gave us an opportunity to get some face time with them to talk about the benefits of that proposal and how it relates to agricultural research, workforce development, all the goals that the city has from an economic development perspective. We were able to give them an overview of the city, talk about the vet school, and that really brought some attention to Amarillo, some things that they weren't quite aware of, and how that really fits into their grants and their goals as an agency. So great takeaways from there. They also asked about Ecolution, that program that we've got, that partnership. I think a couple of them actually want to come tour Pantex very soon. So really great takeaways from all the meetings as far as what the future holds, and continue to build those relationships and have Amarillo front of mind when they have opportunities come up. So any questions or feedback?
Howard, question?
Well, a statement. I compliment you on getting organized on all these grant applications. Instead of leave it to happenstance, seem like you're a lot better organized. Now, my question, I'll say up front, you probably can't answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Of all these grants, it was like 30-something million I saw. We have to match $6 million. Are we prepared to do that? Or are we just leaving it to if we have more revenue than we budgeted and we spend less on expenses?
Right.
Do we need to keep up with that?
So we are keeping up with that with Kyle Sneederjohn and his CIP document. So you'll see references in there like the RAISE grant. We have North Hughes listed as a project in our matching portion. So that's something you'll see more moving forward, of plugging those in and preparing for those and making sure we have the match. But there might be some cases that we're trying just to see if we can get it, and we'll work with council to reallocate dollars or shift priorities because we have funding for certain projects. Maybe we've got a street project plan, but if we get a matching grant, we'll shift priorities to make sure we leverage those federal dollars.
We have the capacity. We're not reserving funds on the assumption that we're going to get all of the grants. If we get a large grant that requires match money beyond what we have the ready capacity to do, we do always have the capacity to, as Andrew said, reprioritize planned projects that are funded. But that would be a question for council. We would bring a recommendation to you and options, and council would give staff guidance. We always want to keep trying to get big amounts of money that are going to help us with major projects, though, and that's really what we're talking about. So we don't have that money just sitting aside doing nothing. But we do have plans to be able to make that money available for council if they choose to do it. But it's always a value-based decision when we're talking about money.
I think it's a great question, though. Thanks. Yeah, and I had totaled $33.5 million in either pending or expected applications.
Right.
That's a lot of money, and that's money that doesn't come out of our property taxpayers' pockets. So, we've already this year seen $240,000 in grants. That was like just what we hope is scratching the surface, but it covers the cost of our contract, more than covers the cost of our contract. So now we're sort of playing on, getting a better return.
Right.
If any of those grants hit, the RAISE grant certainly looks good. But we had such a positive DC trip. I mean, every one of these conversations felt fruitful. So questions from this side? I mean to take over and start. Jared, anything you want to add from that DC trip?
I just wanted to point out how fruitful the conversations were with our delegation in Washington, D.C. Congressman Jackson couldn't have been more helpful particularly in helping us with public safety funding for police and fire both. Senator Cruz was completely engaged in the conversation, especially as it related to seeking out the National Science Foundation funding, to the point where when we brought that up, he got up on the front of his chair and leaned in and really got engaged in that conversation. I think he's going to help us personally as we go through that funding process. And Senator Cornyn's team, Senator Cornyn was not available at the time that we were there, but his team was very helpful in immediately providing letters of recommendation and supporting letters for grants and other things like that. So our delegation, I really wanted to just take a little extra time to point out how helpful I think they are and are going to be as we go through this process.
Frida, anything you want to add from going on that DC trip?
No, just that it was just such an eye-opener to see all of the grant dollars that are available and the opportunities that we have to apply for those dollars again, which takes the burden off of our taxpayers. And I thought of something else in regards to the Department of Transportation in association with the airport. We also looked at maybe a customs building too, something for us to think about down the road, which would be very helpful. And then just having the Normandy group on the ground, boots on the ground, closest to the government. There's hundreds and hundreds of bills that are filed each session, and there's no way that we can keep up with all those bills, but having them there, and they already have the relationships built and, staff in place to help monitor those bills and help us with getting the funding that we need, and it's just a very small cost to our budget for us to have that group available to us to help us. And so the return on investment is going to be extremely huge.
National Science Foundation is probably the perfect example. They had a meeting scheduled within 30 minutes on a Friday for the next Wednesday. So they've got the connections and can get us those meetings.
Yeah, just more context on that National Science Foundation meeting and why it was so important. The AEDC and Amarillo College have been working on a grant called the Regional Innovation Engine Grant, and it has to do with Innovation Outpost, but it's a $160 million grant. And I forget, they told us over 900 different cities or organizations applied for it, and they made the first round cutoff. So they're down within like 150 different cities, and now the next round they're going to do site visits. I think they're going to do 15 cities as a site visit, and out of those 15 cities they're going to pick 5 cities for the $160 million grant. That is huge, huge dollars involved there. What was so great about us being able to meet with the National Science Foundation was that they got to hear Amarillo's story, and they got to see Amarillo's faces sitting in front of them. We really didn't talk about that grant, but we talked about a lot of things happening in our community that would support the work that that grant is doing. And so when they sit down at the table and they have 100 applications in front of them, the one from Amarillo feels more colorful to them, because they have faces and that go with the names, and they understand the work that we're doing and how the city's partnering with the county and the county with the college, and everybody's working with the Economic Development Corporation. It just felt really, really good to tell our story, because we have so many wonderful things that are happening in our city. It's really a unique season of opportunity and growth for us. And that story came across in that meeting, I thought, best of all. I mean, it came across in all the meetings, but it's really, really important. I'll say it to this end of the dais. It's really important for the mayor to go outside the city and to tell our story, and to tell it to the people who are involved in making those decisions about where those funds go. Because when they have a face to go with our name, they can't help it. They're only human too. I think it sticks with them. And so it was a big time commitment. Frida, thank you for making the time to go. It was time away from our businesses and time away from our families. But I think it was 3 days very well spent. And I'll be watching closely to see how many of these applications we hit on and how close we can get to that. If you count the Regional Innovation Engine grant, the $193.5 million worth of potential grants for our city. And if we spend 3 days and one government, assistance contract to even get a portion of that, that's money well invested in us. We're investing it in ourselves. And I especially did want to thank Congressman Jackson's office as well. Had we not been there that day talking about those projects, I don't think we could have turned it around. And so the timing of that, how that played out, is going to greatly affect our firefighters and our police officers right here in Amarillo, two big projects that they need that we don't have the funding for. And I think the congressman is going to open the door for us to get that funding from the federal government. That helps our taxpayers. That helps everybody who lives in our city and gets the services from our police and fire department. But it also helps our first responders who need those services in order to be safe doing their job and to do their jobs even better than they already are doing them. So just a wonderful trip. That's a wonderful tool that we have in the Normandy group. And I'm very pleased with the way that our staff is stewarding that. I'm pleased with Jared's leadership and how he has set up these weekly meetings. Those have been going on for months now. I'm pleased with the department staff and the way they've invested in them. They're not just showing up and waiting to be told what to do, but they're owning it, and they're bringing value every time they have the meeting with Normandy. They understand better how to look for grant opportunities now, but Normandy is also pitching them things that they can go and research and plug into the projects that we already have in the works. So I would just say across the board, well done, and I think it's going to result in some dollars for our community. Anybody else? Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion agenda. Item 1F is to request future agenda items and reports from the city manager. And Howard, I appreciate that you asked about that. I think this work is happening, and it's important work, so thanks for requesting that item.
Report.
Yeah, I think Andrew did a good job, and his team, everybody that's on that team.
I want to ask for another report.
Okay.
Haven't heard in a while about the new water meters. We've got a plan to get them installed, and last I heard they were beginning to install, and whether some of them started working yet. I'd like to.
At risk of, I'm not going to go into the item. I am going to confirm that we will put it on the item for the next council meeting. We have over 1,000 installed, and we are working on, and we'll give you a report on that. and they're working very well. And we're moving forward with the overall installation as we go. But I'll wait until next meeting to give you that update.
Thanks. Okay, anybody else? Great, let's do the consent agenda. Anything there that needs to come off for further discussion or questions? Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Dr. Sauer to approve the items on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Same sign. Okay, that item passes with a 5-0 vote. We've already done agenda item 3A. So moving on to agenda item 3B. Mr. City Manager.
Right, Mayor. We've talked about this a couple of times previously, or at least once, but right now we've got Kyle Sneederjohn, Director of Capital Projects Development and Engineering, to present the item and answer any questions council might have. Kyle, welcome.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We had a presentation on this at our last meeting, just an informational meeting or presentation, and this time we are actually considering the ordinance that would adopt the plan. But this is our 5-year CIP planning document. Let me see if I can. There we go. Perfect. Our community investment program, our CIP, is a 5-year planning document that we utilize to help us plan for our capital investments and come up with funding mechanisms, including looking for alternative funding methods, including grants and that great conversation. The year one of our 5-year plan is always approved in our annual budget, and then years 2 through 5 of that 5-year plan are just that, a planning document. And so it gives us the opportunities as departments to look around corners, to look out ahead, and look for those opportunities and projects that we need to evaluate our needs, as well as gives us the opportunity to present those needs to you guys and to the general citizenry. And then based on that document, that helps us invest wisely and have input into those future needs. One of the things that we added to this year's document based on input from previous was I hesitate to call it a 20-year look because I don't know that it really has a boundary on it, but that was the instructions that we kind of gave to the departments is kind of look out in that kind of 20-year planning criteria, and let's come up with these future projects list that these are projects that they know exist, needs that they know need to be addressed, but we don't have a funding source identified for at this time. And so one of the things that's generated in this document is that list of future projects outside the 5-year planning window. That needs list rounded out to a cool $1.76 billion worth of projects, and spans the gambit of needs to be addressed, and everything from facility needs to public safety needs to utilities and infrastructure needs across the board. And so that was a good effort by the departments. And one of the things that I actually have experienced and think will be a great benefit is just kind of maintaining a clearinghouse of those needs, and that we sometimes lose with the loss of institutional knowledge, maybe a department head who moves on or hands down to the next guy, and so that clearinghouse of future projects really will help us keep that data moving forward and have some succinct actions. We presented to you, or this actually is a presentation of our, for the first reading of an ordinance that would adopt this document. And we will have a second reading on April the 11th. I do have currently a couple of identified revisions to the document And so what we'll do is we'll keep those going. Anything that you guys bring up or want to talk about or want to make changes, obviously those inputs are there. But also I got some comments through community engagement. We are actively still engaged in our PDP conversation, and I'm engaging the citizenry in that conversation. And so I've identified a couple of modifications, two of which are super simple. The first being literally on the first page of the narrative, there's kind of a bullet point list of assumptions in the plan, and I talk about the $3.4 million that is dedicated to parks funding. But in that narrative, I just said for parks maintenance, and then actually it's in parentheses in that paragraph there, I say park maintenance, and really should be park maintenance and park capital, because it's not constrained just to park maintenance. So we're gonna make that revision there in the paragraph. I've got imagine that the engineer has a spelling error. There's at least one. I've found one. There probably is more. I'm good at math. And then the last, there's an identified priorities section paragraph where we talk about projects that either popped up during our budget process or popped up even after the budget process, kind of outside of the conventional plan of this document. And so we kind of highlight some of those projects for you in that identified paragraph or identified priorities paragraph. And we made a revision to that paragraph to include the Grant Street property and the purchase of that property just right behind us here over on the Grant Street side. So those are the three revisions that I currently have. If there are more, we will get those added in and revised in that document. You guys will get a memo and the actual revised pages to that document before our second reading and vote there for that information. All of this plan is out and made available to the public on the city's website. In our Cities of Amarillo website, under the Departments tab, you go to the Finance Department where all the financial information is presented there on that finance page, including the previous year's budgets and the previous year's capital plans. They're all there together, and you can kind of scroll through and see not only how, if you're really good with the numbers, you can see how those budget items tie to the capital plan, and the capital plan ties back to those budget items as well. And the public has access to that. It will be posted. It's posted right now as a draft. And then after the approval of that second reading will become the approved document. I need to take one other step, if you'll oblige me, please, that I was remiss in my last presentation to not introduce my staff. I have two ladies who work directly with me on this initiative and on this program. Tony Davis is here today, and she is my software extraordinaire. She can do things in an Access database that I cannot do, and so she does a wonderful job helping with that. And then Kimberly Sheets is our new program manager for capital projects. She will be filling a hole that we've had a vacancy in for a while, but she has an accounting background and helps me with the numbers as well as that communication effort directly with the departments and their needs. Kimberly's worked in multiple departments within the city and has great relationships, and so that helps with those departmental communications. Those ladies are instrumental in my efforts to get this document prepared, and so I appreciate the opportunity to recognize them. Any questions?
Yes, so Kyle, where are those ladies? Are they here today?
Yes, actually, Tony and Kimberly, stand up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We appreciate you both. Any other questions for Kyle? Okay, good job. Thank you, Kyle. Do we have a motion? Oh, we have to do a public hearing, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Was there a question down here that I stepped on, Floyd?
One more update, Mayor.
Okay, yes, thank you.
I forgot. I was supposed to talk about the grant. Thank you.
You're fine. Okay, I'll make this quick. I sent an email out to City Council on March 21st. Hopefully you all got a copy of it. We were kind of giving some updates, especially on the Prop 1 and Prop 2 projects. but something that has kind of bubbled up through this capital process, and as Kyle mentioned, one of them is, things that just kind of evolve over time or actually come up after the formal budget process. We want to bring to you guys to get some direction. So I had sent an email talking about how we did have a project that City Council approved back in fiscal year 21-22. So that was actually this past fiscal year, and it was about $2.3 million in funding for for youth athletic complex. And since then, we have worked to kind of evolve what that looks like from the city's standpoint. And we have established, or working to establish, tiers number 3 that will cover that area where there's a lot of work being done related to youth sports. And the city has shown projections that this will provide more funding than what we would have had on hand through this project.
So instead of providing $2.3 million to facilitate the project and pay for certain parts of it, like parking and things like that, it's going to, tiers number 3 is going to provide, Andrew, $16 million, something like that?
Yeah.
15 and some change.
So significantly.
To the area to provide for drainage improvements and other infrastructure improvements for the area. So we have, instead of providing that 2.3, we're doing something much more valuable to the developers. They're very appreciative of it, and they're going to take advantage of that. So we have this funding that we want to talk to you about and get some guidance from.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jared. And so with that, I had sent, there is a long list. Y'all have seen Kyle's list of capital projects. There is never a shortage of things that we need to do across the city. But there's some items that have come up, some that we've already received authorization from City Council on this past year. And so we are looking to reallocate that $2.3 million in cash funding to some other areas. Normally, if we have a small project or a little bit that's in excess, when we close out a project, we bring it back in the next budget process. But because this one is $2.3 million, we wanted to go ahead and get some guidance from you all on what that looks like. So the first one that I had mentioned was something that Kyle had just mentioned related to the properties that were purchased on Grant Street, and that was approved by City Council at the September 13th, 2022 meeting. And that was a total of about $1.3 million, and it was not budgeted. So we're needing to reallocate budget money for that. And so the second item that we had on this email was, as you all know, City Hall project is underway, and there will be a need for doing all of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And so that has not been awarded at this point, but we're anticipating what the general funds portion of that is needed is about $1 million. The third thing is we are working diligently on fire station number 14. Council approved that in the current year's budget. There was a total of $5 million, and that was for land purchase, construction of the building, and purchase of the fire truck. We are not as far along in that process as we had hoped at this point, but it is underway and it's going very well. Unfortunately, costs are going up significantly. One of the items that we already have seen is we had budgeted about $1 million for a fire truck. That's coming in closer to about $1.3 to $1.4 million. Those costs have gone up significantly, and there's quite a bit of lead time on those. So with that, with what we're looking at for construction, we're anticipating needing about another $500,000 related to that project. And then beyond that, and Kyle could go on for a while about this, I'm sure there's always additional arterial funding that is needed on a lot of those Proposition 1 projects. And what we had listed here is Coulter Street, 34th Street, Bell, Sundown Lane, and Tradewinds. And so there was a lot more information in that email related to the update on the projects and kind of where we were at, what we had planned on doing. And so I was hoping to maybe be able to get some guidance from council. This is not, this is actually within the overall budget. It's not a budget. There's no budget amendment needed. We just need some direction from council on either bring it back at budget time, or let's take this 2.3 and maybe address some of these needs that are identified here that are already ongoing or have occurred.
So just for context, items 1 and 2 we know we're going to have to do, whether it's with these funds or with other funds. Item 3, we're anticipating that there's going to be a need there, although we're working as hard as we can to get the project in under budget. And inflation is hitting this project, and rest assured we will do the project up to the full scope so that we can provide that public safety resource to the hospital district in that area of town. So we're not going to talk about downscaling the scope of the project. We're just going to try and be as efficient as we can be, but we anticipate we're going to have needs there as well. And then obviously, like Laura said, the capital projects that Kyle runs are also all in the same boat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Howard?
Well, you mentioned several needs. We voted to purchase this building over here.
Yes.
We need to do that.
Yes.
So are you saying we need to come up with money for that, 1.3 million?
That is correct, and this is just a way to shift funding that was already approved in a capital project to cover that purchase. Otherwise, we would look to bring that back with a budget amendment later on in the year related to any kind of additional revenue we collected or savings through the expense side. So, but this, yes, that is, I put it as our number one priority since the funds have already been spent.
Well, I see that's an important need for the city long term.
Okay.
And then the next item you mentioned was furniture.
Yes.
I would rather all the people working in this building don't have to sit on the floor.
We appreciate that. Okay.
What if we split the baby a little bit and we gave $500,000 to the public safety needs, fully funding those? We fully fund the Grant Street, and then we put $500,000 toward the $1 million needed for furniture at City Hall.
Okay.
Only half of them would have to sit on the floor.
Right, yes.
Well, we'll bring, as we get closer to that part of the project, we'll bring some options to council, either allocating revenues from sales tax that are coming in above budget, or some other recommendations, some other options to council, understanding that the more we take out of over revenues on sales tax, it takes away from the amount of money we'll have available for next year's capital project process. But we will have to take care of all these things, just like anybody's household budget.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm definitely good with that plan, especially that we're taking care of, fire station number 14 and then City Hall, making sure that we're taking care of the employees.
Okay.
So I agree. I think the fire station, the $500,000 to the fire station is important. And then I'd like to see us put the balance of that into streets. That's our biggest need. I think we've all said that many times. I'd be willing to try to recycle and reuse some furniture for a while, figure that out down the road. And especially with the other building on Grant, we haven't identified a purpose for that building. So even though we're obligated to it, we need to prioritize our funds for that at a later date.
Just want to clarify, maybe I misunderstood. If we don't allocate cash to pay for the Grant Street building, then we're going to take it out of Kyle's CIP budget, which is essentially streets.
We don't want to do that.
So if,
Yeah.
I mean,
What
you're saying
would come
is
out of next year's capital.
it's a left-hand, right-hand kind of thing, so it makes a great talking point. But I just want to make sure, unless I misunderstood you, if we don't allocate the cash, it's coming out of Kyle's budget, and that's money that would most likely be going to
Mayor,
streets. Did I misunderstand that?
I do think
One
you
moment,
misunderstood
please.
me, ma'am.
But, okay, I just want to make sure that I'm addressing this question to Laura, that I understand. Did I understand how that transfer was going to work?
Yes, so the 1.3 on the Grant Street property purchase has already been spent. We've already spent those dollars. And so if we don't take it from an existing project, then what it would do is it would go against some of the either savings or collections, excess collections that we're receiving in the current year from the general fund. Anytime we do that, that lessens the capital that we're bringing forward for council to utilize during the budget process. And a lot of that is going towards it would be prioritized towards what Kyle is bringing forward in his capital plan.
Okay, thank you for helping me understand
Yeah,
that.
no,
Sorry.
No, you're good. I apologize to overspeak there. I do think you misunderstood me in the way of not a decision that you have to make today, but a decision that you would have future options in the future in the source of additional revenues. So I understand that everything all comes into kind of one end game, and Kyle has to shuffle that deck, but it would give us more opportunity to see how much funds we would have at that point in time. You don't have all of the excess revenues that you would have by the end of the year currently.
That's correct.
So we're forced to make a decision based on what we have in our pocket right now, not necessarily what our total revenues would be. And so this would be a more suitable budget for the future council to weigh in on, not necessarily for ours, but our streets, meaning that's our biggest need, is where we need to prioritize our citizens' money into that. And I know that that's one of Kyle's biggest needs.
Don't disagree that streets is a big priority, but I guess I'm maybe not understanding the bigger point, because Grant Street is something that has to be paid for, whether it's now or 6 months from now. So I guess I'm just thinking it's all coming out of the same pot.
Yeah, and it's actually already been paid for.
Yeah,
this is more of an accounting question than it is
yeah,
anything else.
okay, all right.
Yes.
The accounting question is not what question I'm asked to answer here today.
Okay.
I think what I'm being asked to answer is, where is the best usage of this money that I have now? And so I get that in a household budget you have to pay all your bills by the end of the month, but it's always best to pay your mortgage first, and then pay the rest of the bills as they come. And so I just like the prioritization of one of our biggest needs. So my inclination, Mayor, would be to be in favor of the $500,000 to the fire department for that additional cost, and then the balance to streets.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion? Or Eddie, do you want to?
And this is not an action item. I was just looking for
sorry.
direction. So, yeah.
So don't let me forget, we have to come back and do a public hearing on this.
Yes, that is true. This is kind of in conjunction with, the public hearing.
Okay, Eddie, do you want to give some input?
The motion.
So this does not affect the motion for the approval of the 5-year plan. This is kind of a subset of it. Yes, this is just giving us direction in the current year, and so unless they wanted it modified. That is a good point. Unless you want us to make some sort of a change, it is all listed in the book. But if you want something more formalized in the 5-year plan, we could certainly do that as well. We're talking about current year. This book is really looking next year and beyond. So we do have it listed in a narrative of some kind of mid-year changes that Kyle had mentioned. Other than that, this book is really forward-looking, year 2 and beyond.
To Councilmember Stanley's point, if we were to allocate that 2.3 to the streets capital projects or something, they would be incorporated into that book now. It's the reason why we're talking about that. If they were not to be incorporated into that project, it would not alter the ordinance and as it's currently proposed, right? And we would take council's guidance and
Council has already approved year 1, which is the year we're in right now. So the motion will only approve years 2 through 5, unless we're pulling something forward. Let's say some of the street projects are in year 2. That would essentially, if council decided to fund, $1.8 million of street projects, we could go through and pull those out of year 2 and kind of show them as a mid-year change. So I think that's maybe the change to the.
However, as opposed to that, as proposed by Councilmember Smith, it wouldn't affect it.
That's correct. Yes.
That's the only distinction I was wanting to make. So y'all would need to take action now and modify the ordinance if you wanted to take those funds and put it into the CIP.
Yes.
Alternatively, if you said, let's do what Councilmember Smith proposed or some variation thereof, we will take that guidance into account as we move forward with executing those projects.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm probably going to be more interested in closing the loop on the accounting question for the building.
Okay.
Because we're going to address streets, and we're going to constantly continue to address streets. I don't want us to push off the accounting for how we paid for the building. I would just assume that we did that. We did that post. That's been a while. I think that needs to be, from an accounting standpoint, that needs to be closed. And we need to be done with that part of it. And then how we do with the rest of it, I'm pretty open.
Okay.
Do you have what you need, Laura? Maybe I should say, Brian and Jared, do you have what
we
you
have a
need?
I believe, and I will put what I heard into words. I think Councilmember Stanley would prefer to, instead of spending money on the or allocating this 2.3 to the Grant Street property or to City Hall, would prefer to instead spend it on the fire station and the rest of it going toward the streets. Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
And if I heard Councilmember Smith, he said he would prefer to use the 2.3 on the Grant Street property, $500,000 on and then the rest on City Hall. And Councilmember Sauer said that he would prefer to spend allocate the 1.3 to the Grant Street property, $500,000 to the City Hall project, and $500,000 to the fire station project. Mayor, I believe that you and Frida both, or you and Mayor Pro Tem, pardon me, ma'am, Mayor Pro Tem Powell said that accounting for the Grant Street property and also for City Hall. I may have missed that last one up. So actually, you said what Councilmember Sauer said.
I did.
And
yeah.
Fire Station 14 as well.
Okay, so both of you all said what Councilmember Sauer said. So based on that, our consensus would be that we're going to focus on Grant Street property, $500,000 on City Hall, $500,000 on Fire Station 14. But that's based on what I'm hearing. Y'all tell me if I'm correct or not.
Yes, sir.
I think that's correct.
All right. That gets us what we need.
Can we clarify that? I apologize. How much will go towards the Grant Street building?
So
all 1.3?
That is the consensus that I'm hearing. That's how much we have spent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, 1.3. City Hall was $1 million. Fire Station was $500,000.
So the only thing we didn't allocate anything for is streets.
Of that 2.3, correct?
Of this 2.3, yes, that is correct.
And then you're estimating that you got half of your furniture paid for with the $500,000?
Yes, and we will work diligently on that. We have not awarded a contract on that at that point. Actually, I think that is maybe covered under an annual contract that we have, but we will work to get that within that budgeted amount or as close to, or we will bring another update to council on that through the budget.
We've been a little bit loose referring to it as furniture. It's actually furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It's a pretty large,
right.
You know
So
as much
FF&E.
as anybody.
Yes,
it's a large
FF&E,
line item
that
for
is
any
correct.
project.
Yeah.
So the last clarification would just be,
Sure.
I believe I heard someone say that the building has already been paid for. This is an accounting question.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just providing funding for what we've already spent. So have we closed on the building already?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on item 3B, which is with regard to ordinance number 8054. Anyone present who wishes to speak for, on, or against the item may have 3 minutes to do so. Mr. Skank.
In reference to this, it just sounds like there's a little confusion going on in reference to where we're going to change. I mean, I admire Kyle and what he does. I'm not so, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to y'all, and Jared tried to put it into a few words. But if you're fixing to pass that motion on the 2.3 or 2.3 million to do those particular things, I think, in my reference, you're out of line. Because what we're talking about is this 5-year plan, and it doesn't mean infusing a motion on top of that to where you're going to use this other money. That should be another agenda item. that you need to deal with, because it doesn't come from, it comes from the budgeting situation, doesn't come because of the community, the ordinance here that we're talking about. So consider that, you know, maybe we'll do something next Tuesday, or not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday. Give us some time, because as I've listened to y'all, it's a confusing topic right now.
It is, but isn't the reality of it is the 2.3 only has an effect on the motion if we are doing, so in other words, we're just allocating the 2.3, 2.4 million, but it only affects the motion if we have put it into streets.
You're only allocating it if you put it into this capital improvement plan. If you don't, it's going to come to you at later times to approve those expenditures for these other projects that we're going to put together.
And I think we got there. I think we all five understand that.
Yeah.
So
that's
streets.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right? Yes, sir.
Anyone else? At this time, we'll close the hearing and entertain a motion on item 3B.
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 8054, approving and adopting the 5-year community investment program for fiscal year 2022 through 2023 through 2026 and 2027.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Stanley to approve ordinance number 8054 with regard to the capital projects 5-year community investment program. Any discussion or questions about the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes with a 5-0 vote. The last item on our Section 3 of the agenda is consideration of ordinance number 8055. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we're going to be talking about amending our rates for our happy hour golf, which has been wildly successful. We've got Michael Kashuba and George Priolo. It looks like George is coming up here to talk about the item. He is our golf guru. So let's just hand it to George to present the item and answer any questions council might have.
Perfect. Thank you all for having me. Yes, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of a history about our happy hour. This was a program we started after 2017. It's been 3 full years. And this was a program that was designed at a time of the day that we were doing zero business, basically, after 6 o'clock. And so we wildly put this together. In the first year, it was very, very successful. The reason why most of our fees come through in the budget process, but when we do budget the way we're structured, we were having to make decisions in April of last year, and I just didn't want to put this one in for the summer of last year without a little bit more data. But my thought was, we knew we were going to have a price increase in October, but before I got to my next summer, I wanted a little bit more data from last summer to make sure. And then staff got together, and we've come up with these recommendations going into this summer. And I didn't want it to go another year without addressing it, basically. So, is it me? In 1920 fiscal year, we charged $12 per person, including our taxes. You can see the rounds, about 4,600 were at Ross, 3,300 were at Comanche. Ross was doing about 60% of the rounds, and we produced about $88,000 on a program that, again, we were doing very little money. So very successful, but with that 8,000 rounds, it became a little bit cumbersome. We had a lot of people coming and hitting that golf course at 6 o'clock, and they were kind of running over our paying customer. There were so many of them. A lot of nights they were just running out there on the golf course, jumping in front of people, and it was very hard to manage with that 8,000 rounds because it's such a short time frame. So basically, the next year we knew we better adjust it a little bit. So in 2021, we adjusted it to $15, and this is at both places. And we did go down in rounds. It became a lot more manageable, but you can see by going up on the price, we still did about the same amount of money. And this is where we had to make that decision last year whether we wanted to adjust the fees back during budget last April, or if we wanted another summer of data, because we had dropped and I didn't know what we wanted to, I just wanted to see what the last summer would do. You can still see that Ross ran about 60% of the rounds to Comanche's 40. Now remember, on our green fees, we're charging the same on this, but on our regular green fees for our paying customer, Ross Rogers charges $3 more than Comanche. So we were giving them Ross Rogers at the same rate versus our regular fees. And so then we fast forward to last summer, and this is the year I wanted a little bit more data, and we stayed at $15. You can see our 6,500 rounds jumped back up to 7,700 rounds, and our revenues jumped. And again, we weren't quite 60-40, but we were still 55-45. And so the reason why we're coming to you now is we wanted to move forward for what we're going to do this summer. And our recommendation was a couple of things, and the professional golf staff got together and kind of talked this through. We had a $2 increase on green fees, so it just kind of made sense that we went from $15 at Comanche to $17, and that kind of accounted for our $2 fee increase that we did last October. That's across the board. So we're basically catching up with our fees. But we wanted to adjust Ross Rogers just a little bit more, get back into the theme of Ross Rogers charges $3 more than Comanche, so it goes up to $20. And that was also in trying to basically balance that 60-40 out. Maybe we can make it a little bit more 50-50. And so basically we're looking at moving from $15 to $20 at Ross and from $15 to $17 at Comanche. So I'd be glad to kind of answer any questions and any history if you have any questions about it.
No questions.
I'll make a comment.
I thought that might be coming.
You know, George has done an outstanding job with this. I mean, an outstanding job. And this is what my prediction is. It's just like when you increase the price, the rounds went down, your revenue went up.
Yep.
Same thing's going to happen this summer. I'm not sure you're going to lose as many rounds as you did the first time, because it's still a pretty sweet deal to get to play late, take your entire family, have a great time. So I think it's and a little bit, hopefully it does maybe relieve a little bit of the stress on your staff out there, because the 8,000 rounds after 6 o'clock, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, you know, like I was telling you in the parks meeting, you know, before we weren't doing a lot after 6 o'clock, so we were paying our staff out there basically to sit out there for our 2 or 3 or 4 golfers to come in that wanted to stay till 9:30 and 10 playing golf. The difference was they were caught up, and all they had to do is put up 2 or 3 carts at 9:30. Now we have about 60 carts that come in at 9:30, and they're out there at about 10:30. So, but that's a good thing, because, like I tell them, how can you argue with the revenue that's coming in after 6 o'clock?
And you're selling snacks.
That's right.
Beverages.
Happy hour.
Happy hour, exactly.
So whenever you're doing counting those rounds, so how many, do you even count each one of the individuals on the family? Or is that basically, when it's a family round, you just count it as 2 rounds?
No, we punch them in as family, but we're basically charging, the way it works is we keep a round count as a button, but we're charging the golf cart is what we're doing. And because we do have a hard cost against those golf carts running around that golf course. And so we punch in the rounds that are played. And I'll tell you what this program's done is it's brought people back to the game, especially with families and bringing their kids out and enjoying an evening with their family, where we never saw mom come with the kids and dad to go play, you know. And it's not designed to play 9 holes. You might get in 6 holes. You might get in 13 holes. You just can play till dark. And so it's brought a lot of people back into the game, so to speak. And this clientele that we have after 6 o'clock is not our core golfer. It is not the player that is our annual pass people, and it's not our normal Saturday green fee people. It's a different clientele that we brought back into the game.
But some of them will become your normal clientele.
And that's what we hope. And some of them have.
Yeah. I think it's great. It's a genius idea, and it's and it just helps out with closing that gap that we've been working on the last 6
That's
years.
right.
And I think that's great.
Howard?
On the family rate, so that has to be actual family, a spouse, a son or daughter.
Not necessarily. Generally speaking, it generally is. It's mom, dad, the kids. But I can't. It could have been. It could be a brother and an uncle, or not necessarily in the same family.
But it could be a friend.
No, but you got to think about it. It's not like you're getting you and your three buddies together for $40. If they're not in the same family, they're each hitting the register at $15.
Sounds like you've dealt with that before.
A few times. Same thing with our annual pass and family members, and it's like, can you claim them on your taxes? Oh, no, we cannot claim. They're not a family member, so we address a little bit that as it comes.
Like if my family came out, George, and there's 5 of us and we kind of all squeeze onto one cart, we're going to pay $40. But you're going to ping us as 5 players, 5 rounds.
We're going to ring up. You're going to ring up $40 worth of golf carts, and we're going to give you 3 carts. Assuming they all have.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not putting all of you on one cart. That's kind of like chain.
I'm always hanging, especially the boys. I'm like,
Yeah.
get on the bumper, boys. I mean,
That would be kind of equivalent
that's a safety issue.
to throw it. They'd be
Okay.
throwing the bicycle over the
but
train
my
track.
real question was a family rate. You really are counting the number of people that are going out to play.
Yeah,
the
but we're
rounds.
ringing it up at whatever the $40 rate, hitting a button and off they go. If there's more than 2, it's $40 up to 5.
Wow, nice.
I want a high five because I think the whole council wants to give you a high five because we have seen you make so many changes and you've been so patient. And we just really, really appreciate the work you've been doing for us, George. Fantastic job.
Yep.
We appreciate you.
You bet. We appreciate it.
Closing that gap.
Yeah, the waters have been kind of choppy.
They've smoothed out.
But because of your leadership and your team and the way that you've continued to pour into both your clients, the Parks Board, Michael, you guys have made it a better situation. And I just want to use this as an opportunity to emphasize that we can't get where we were again.
No.
And so we have to every year give small bumps, or else we're going to get so far behind that it almost sank the ship trying to get caught up. And during campaign season, you hear this phrase a lot. Well, we need to run the city like a business, and I guess I would say that's an uneducated thing to say because we don't charge kids to swing on our swings in our parks. Mm-hmm. We don't charge people when the police respond to a 911 call. We don't offer services like a normal business and charge for them. So while we want to be good stewards with our dollars, the one way we do that is we do try to capture costs back from the users who are using the services. We don't do that for police and fire and some of those things,
right.
But we do it for golf, and we're trying to get there, and it's been a 6-year journey. And I know you're going to keep working on that, closing that gap so that people who are using that service are paying for that service.
As our plays come back at a higher rate, obviously, the biggest problem that we have, getting away from this a little bit, is the cost of doing business is so much more. Mm-hmm. The fertilizers, the sand, the seeds, the things that we deal with. Revenues are great, but it is keeping up and it is closing a little bit. If I had the economy that we had back 5 years ago with these revenues, we'd probably be there, honestly, or really close.
Yeah, we'd be real close, I think.
Are we under $500,000 now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no,
great.
about 670 last year.
70,
yeah,
okay.
from 2 million 5 years ago.
I knew we were really close.
Yeah, we're getting closer, but we'll see how it keeps going. Got to have good weather. There's a lot of variables in golf that we fight, right. Not just necessarily, rounds coming out. Wind, rain, snow, it affects everything. So you just don't really know until you add it up.
It's true. All right, George, we appreciate you.
Just to reiterate what you're saying, Mayor, I remember almost 6 years ago when we were working through, with five of us, working through the budget, and we were, what I remember, $1.8 million in the hole. We've come a long ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like we, keep pushing that way, and maybe it'll get better. So,
Thanks for doing that.
yes, sir.
George.
You bet.
Okay,
Anything else?
that's it. I think, do we have a motion on this item?
Yes, Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 8055, amending the Amarillo Municipal Code, Chapter 12-4, Section 12-4-5, in parentheses N, to update certain golf fees.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilmember Sauer to approve ordinance number 8055. Any discussion or questions about the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes with a 5-0 vote. And at this time, that brings us to last item on our agenda is an executive session item, so I would ask the city attorney to read our dismissal language.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, a closed session of the Amarillo City Council was announced on 3/28/2023 at 3:30 p.m. under the following authorities: Section 551.074, discuss employment evaluation of public officer or employee. Thank you.